Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Tales of Herding God Part 238 based on novel. So let's start. Qin Mu copied the runes on the divine ring of creation wholeheartedly. Memory was never as good as writing down, and as he copied, layers of comprehension would instantly appear in his mind. The meaning of some runes could be naturally comprehended after copying them once, so he would comprehend several divine arts in the creation of the corporeal body. However, there were some rune markings that needed to be deduced to be able to know the marvel within. I should really have brought a few hundred scholars from Eternal Peace. If we researched and copied together, our speed would surely be incredible. With so many scholars copying together, there will definitely be all kinds of strange and marvelous insights. This was the effect of a dynasty. A myriad of talents in every field could work together and carry out large-scale research. Their speed would be surprisingly fast and would far surpass the speed of a single researcher. What a pity Shi has a nature of not submitting unless he gets beaten up first. He needs to be beaten up badly before he will become submissive and be willing to work with us. Qin Mu used his vital qi to light up the runes on the divine ring of creation and push them to transform. Once this task was done, he continued copying the runes. He thought to himself, First Ancestor's abilities aren't bad. I just don't know if he can subdue him. Inside Crimson Light Heaven suppressing floor, First Ancestor Human Emperor was exceptionally dauntless, as he fought up to the 300th floor. This building was a precious treasure that suppressed the celestial palaces. Its power was surprisingly huge, and the divine weapon worshipped on every floor was one of the most famous divine weapons of Crimson Light era. On top of that, all of these divine weapons were in a set of 6. God Shi used his own magic power, and the power of the divine weapon burst forth. After that burst of power, his abilities leveled up. Together with the hanging treasures on every floor, they formed a formation. The power of the 1,000 treasure formation was surprisingly huge, as they attacked First Ancestor Human Emperor. The 1,000 divine weapons shook as beams of divine might struck towards First Ancestor Human Emperor. The 6 treasures in Shi's hands also swung up and down with overflowing divine might. However, they were all shattered by the Human Emperor with brute force. The 1,000 treasure formation outside the floor was also destroyed, forcing Shi, who had been blown away, to retreat to the next level. As they reached the upper levels, the power of the treasure that was being worshipped became greater and greater. Likewise, the formation of the divine weapons outside became stronger and stronger. When First Ancestor Human Emperor fought continuously to the 800th floor, he started feeling exhausted. Actually, after the 300th floor, it was no longer Shi who was controlling these treasures. It was the treasures that were controlling Shi. Shi's own power was already insignificant when compared to the power of the precious treasures and the formation. First Ancestor Human Emperor was now fighting against the treasures and formations of Crimson Light Heaven suppressing floor. He had fought his way up to the 800th floor with brute force. If I continue fighting like this, I will be injured. First Ancestor Human Emperor's gaze flickered and he thought to himself, from the looks of it, Shi couldn't withstand any longer. His Anusrava fighting god technique wasn't completely flawless and without any opening. He only relied on absorbing the qi and blood of other people to maintain himself at peak performance. However, the prerequisite was he had to first injure his opponent. If the opponent was not injured, he would be helpless and can only exhaust his vital qi cultivation, making him weaker and weaker. Shi's 3 heads and 6 arms were indeed incomparably powerful for battles, but he was still much weaker than him. He was long covered in injuries and couldn't hold on much longer. The reason why Shi was still able to hold on was mainly because First Ancestor Human Emperor had been holding back his power. He wanted to convince Qin Mu and let him see the power of his heaven and earth mudra, making Qin Mu willing to learn from him. Also, the reason why first ancestor human emperor had fought all the way to the 800th floor was to show Qin Mu the exquisiteness of his mudra skills. As long as his exquisite moves caught Qin Mu's eyes, Qin Mu would be interested. First ancestor could then take advantage of the situation and push him to learn. It would be a win-win situation. I've already fought my way to the 800th floor and showed all I can show. It's time to end this. First ancestor human emperor suddenly erupted with his full power as he executed his everlasting universe mudra. With his mudra pressing down, the space inside the floor nearly solidified and God Kai Shi became fixed in the air, his body trembling violently. As though he was suffering from 100 terrifying blows, his body shook 100 times. The treasures in his hands suddenly lost control, as they burst forth with power to strike at first ancestor human emperor. These 6 treasures were no longer under Kai Shi's control. They automatically attacked first ancestor human emperor by themselves. First ancestor human emperor pulled out his sword, and with a swing, several clangs were heard as those 6 treasures became instantly broken. They lost their power and were destroyed straight away by this divine sword. First ancestor's attainments in sword skills weren't high, but what was truly strong was the sword in his hands. The divine might in this sword could actually fight with the entire crimson light heaven suppressing floor. It was obvious it wasn't any ordinary treasure. Hall of Human Emperors was built on one of the 36 celestial heavens, and this sword of his was Jade Brightness Sword, a treasure that founding Emperor Celestial Heavens used to suppress Jade Brightness Palace. The personal sword of a prince was naturally extraordinary. When this sword was drawn, all of the divine weapons hanging outside the floor were also trembling violently. Their powers swept in all directions as rays of divine light, that were 100 miles long, flashed past. They sliced the space in the surroundings, causing them to shake non-stop. First ancestor human emperor scattered his mudra skill, and Kai Shi collapsed on the ground with a thud. The divine weapons hanging outside the floor clattered as they all dropped down. The sight of all the divine weapons dropping from the 1,000 floors was truly magnificent. This was the result of the collision between the power of Crimson Light Heaven Suppressing Floor and Jade Brightness Sword. The Crimson Light Heaven Suppressing Floor was no match for the sword, and thus, all the treasures in the building were cut down. Even though the power of this sword was very strong, First Ancestor didn't have much attainments in sword skills, so he rarely used it. When Pan Gong Tso saw this sight, he shivered and hesitated for a moment. His body then gradually faded away and vanished. The 3 heads of Kai Shi coughed up blood, and he crawled up the stairs to the 801st floor, but he slid back down again. Dao brother, neither of us has to die. First Ancestor swung his sword back into its sheath and went forward to help him up. I really mean no harm, and you should be able to see that. If I used my full power right from the start, you wouldn't have been able to survive. Your Crimson Light era and my founding Emperor era are both in the same plight. We have hidden in seclusion for so long, so why should we let our relationship turn sour just because of a misunderstanding? Kai Shi's 3 heads panted heavily and he struggled. You are trying to make the gods of my Crimson Light era fall into the control of eternal peace. Eternal peace is merely a small country, and it's a country that any god from Crimson Light era could easily wipe out. How can I accept submitting to eternal peace? If I submitted, how am I supposed to answer to Son of God when I return? First Ancestor Human Emperor said righteously, you are mistaken. My original intention is to form an alliance and not let Crimson Light era submit to us. The strong practitioners of Crimson Light era didn't submit to the celestial heavens for tens of thousands of years. So why would you submit to eternal peace? I admire the moral integrity of the seniors of Crimson Light era, so I definitely won't insult you guys. May Dao brother Kai Shi consider this again. Kai Shi sat up and stopped the bleeding from his wounds. He sneered and said, "Why didn't you say so earlier?" First ancestor human emperor shook his head. "I said it, but you were insistent on beating me to death and search my soul." With unsteady movements, Kai Shi slowly stood up. He finally gave in and apologized. "I was wrong, let me apologize to you." First ancestor hurriedly took him by the arm and said, "I was also too hard on my blows too." Kai Shi nursed his injuries for a while and stumbled down the stairs. "Even though my Crimson Light dynasty can ally with you, we will never submit to anyone. Besides, I alone can't make this decision. I need to contact Son of God, only he can make a decision." First ancestor frowned slightly. "Must I really fight once more with this Crimson Light Son of God? Are the people of Crimson Light era all this stubborn? Aren't they a little too hard to deal with?" For over 20,000 years, he had been wallowing in his own guilt and blame for not going to the battlefield, so he had stayed aloof from worldly affairs. At this moment, he was only thinking of how to push the responsibility of Crimson Light era to someone else. He thought, it's still better for human Emperor Qin to deal with this kind of troublesome matter. However, he didn't know that Qin Mu was usually the one who washes his hands off all responsibility. He only provided ideas and left the work to Heavenly Saint Cult, or people like Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, and Emperor Yangfeng. First ancestor human emperor, and Kai Shi walked down from Crimson Light Heavenly suppressing floor, and came to the side of the divine ring of creation. They saw Qin Mu was still executing this divine ring, and earnestly studying the transformation of the runes. First ancestor human emperor gave a slight smile and thought to himself, he's a youth after all. He's still very reserved and can't bring himself to learn my mudra skills. I shall give him a step to come down later, and he will learn my mudra skills. You guys have finished fighting? Qin Mu was surprised and turned his head back to look at them. So fast. I haven't even had the time to finish copying these runes. Keep up the act. First ancestor human emperor sneered inwardly, but he said with a pleasant face, I have already talked with Dao brother Kai Shi. At last, we didn't fall out completely. Qin Mu looked at Crimson Light Heaven suppressing floor. The precious building, that was still shining with precious rays just now, was now completely bare. Its light had also dimmed. He then looked at God Kai Shi. He didn't know how many bones were broken in this executioner's body. His flesh was all blooded and one head was hanging down, as though its neck was broken. Truly had not fallen out, he secretly thought to himself. God Kai Shi's expression was also slightly terrible as he said, Little friend Qin has gotten hold of my God execution mysterious knife. So please give it back. Qin Mu shook his head. Sacred teacher gave me that small case. I can't return it to you. The rule of our great ruins is we never return anything we had relied on our abilities to steal, pick up, and given by others who had stolen it. He continued seriously. I was picked up by Granny, and she said she won't return me to anyone even if they wanted me. My grandpa cripple steals things from everywhere to give to others, and they never need to return them as well. Kai Shi was speechless from anger, and his entire body was trembling. First ancestor human emperor quickly said, Dao brother, he is still a child. It wasn't good for him to erupt in anger. So he said coldly, every time God execution mysterious knife is opened, it will need to drink blood to nourish its blade. Otherwise, it will have to devour its owner in return. You have already used it once, haven't you? I see blood light plaguing you. The next time you open up the case, God execution mysterious knife will kill you to drink your blood. Qin Mu was shocked and his heart felt uneasy. First ancestor human emperor asked, what knife? Show it to me and I'll take a look. Qin Mu took out the small case and gave it to first ancestor human emperor. The latter then examined the small case in detail. He studied it for a moment, and his expression changed slightly when he couldn't open it. God Execution Knife of Crimson Light Era, an artifact of great danger. There's a grievance of a god on Emperor's throne inside. It's extremely terrifying. He still wanted to return it to Kai Shi, but Qin Mu hurriedly said, "Be careful, he'll use the knife to kill you." First Ancestor was stunned. He returned the small case to Qin Mu. "Don't use it if you don't have the need to. I can feel the grievance and murderous intent of a strong practitioner on Emperor's throne coming out from it. You have already used it once, right? That time, it didn't manage to drink any blood, so the grievances are already plaguing you. It's best if you let it drink blood to quell its grievances against you." Qin Mu nodded his head. He pressed down the case while asking God Kai Shi, "Senior, can you call out your useless disciple, that fellow with 2 deer legs?" Pan Gongso, who was hiding in a dark spot, was planning to come out when he heard Qin Mu's words. He suddenly came to a realization, and he couldn't help becoming furious. "This scoundrel wants to sacrifice me to the knife." God Kai Shi naturally wasn't willing to hand Pan Gongso over as a sacrifice to him. He snorted. "It's not that I can't let you keep God Execution Mysterious Knife first. Face the consequence yourself if you get devoured by the knife." Qin Mu kept the case, his gaze wavering. "Since Senior Kai Shi is the executioner of Crimson Light Era, and has possessed this treasure for tens of thousands of years, you should know how to get rid of the grievances plaguing the case, right?" Kai Shi nearly burst with anger. "You stole my treasure, yet you are still asking me how to use it. Why don't you steal it?" "Oh right, you already stole it from me." Qin Mu looked at First Ancestor Human Emperor. His gaze seemed to suggest that he wanted him to beat Kai Shi up once more, forcing him to tell him the method. First Ancestor Human Emperor understood what he wanted, but he shook his head with a troubled expression. "I've already beaten him enough, so I can't beat him anymore. At most, you don't use the knife inside the case from today onwards. This kind of fierce weapon becomes fiercer the more you feed it, and it will never be full. What if one day you kill a few people, and it still isn't full? It will drink your blood instead." Qin Mu jumped in shock. If it was truly as what First Ancestor had said, using this knife was indeed incomparably dangerous. Crimson Light Celestial Heavens had used this fierce weapon to kill people, because they had quite a number of gods they had to escort up to God Execution stage every day. Therefore, God Execution Mysterious Knife had always been full. Kai Shi's words made him very fearful of this small case. It was obvious he couldn't completely control this small case. Back then, Kai Shi had encountered the devil race, and he got injured after a huge fight with them. As a result, his chi and blood were absorbed by God Execution stage, and God Execution Mysterious Knife, nearly killing his corporeal body. He had no choice but to seal himself and become a dried corpse. It could be said that even when one possessed the method to control it, the fierce knife was still extremely dangerous. However, if Qin Mu were to throw the small case away, he would be reluctant to it. First Ancestor Human Emperor looked at Kai Shi and said, "Dao brother, let us ally ourselves. Shall Dao brother discuss with Human Emperor Qin, and find a solution that's beneficial for both sides?" Kai Shi looked at Qin Mu. He suddenly remembered that Qin Mu had poisoned him and played all kinds of tricks on him. "I'm not going to ally with you anymore. This brat is too crafty. I will definitely be at a disadvantage if I ally with him." Teacher is right. Pan Gongso showed himself from a distance. He shouted, "If you join forces with him, you still have to count money for him after being betrayed. I myself have experienced that." Qin Mu was furious. He took out the small case, as though he wanted to sacrifice him to the knife. Kai Shi said calmly, "If you can't kill him, you will be killed next. Qin Mu hesitated and tucked the small case away. He mumbled, I have fought together with Grandmaster through life and death. Grandmaster is like a brother to me, so how could I lay my hands on him? Pan Gong Tso's fury couldn't be contained. Who's your brother? Don't make up stories and slander me. First ancestor human emperor felt his head aching. He truly didn't want to be the middleman to help both sides form an alliance. Qin Mu said with a smile, since Senior Kai she isn't willing to discuss with me, how about you discuss with the Emperor of Eternal Peace? The era now is Eternal Peace era, and as the emissary of Crimson Light era, having the Emperor speak to you personally is also respectable enough. Kai Shi's heart trembled slightly. He nodded his head. Before I meet the Emperor, you must impart your art of creation to me. First ancestor human emperor was about to nod and say something when he saw Qin Mu shook his head. He immediately shut his mouth. Qin Mu's gaze flickered. I've heard that there's a Crimson Light Son of God in Crimson Light era. He should be the one that decides the matters, right? We can first discuss the terms. As for the art of creation, first ancestor can check your clansman and see if he's able to save them and help them recover their memory. However, before we meet the Crimson Light Son of God, we can't teach it to you. Kai Shi accepted it reluctantly and said, there's no time to lose. Let's go meet the Emperor immediately. Qin Mu looked towards Crimson Light Heaven suppressing floor, and saw all the divine weapons piled up below it. He exclaimed to himself in pity, it would be nice if I could go over and pick up a few items. Also, if Divine Ring of Creation is executed in reverse, it would probably seal the corporeal body and primordial spirit. It's a method to transform people into creatures. If it landed in my hands, it will be great to use it on enemies. Divine Ring of Creation was used as a tool for sealing people, but in Qin Mu's eyes, this item definitely had an unimaginably strong power. If he executed this divine ring in reverse, and shone the runes on his opponents, any normal gods would probably have the structure of their corporeal bodies and primordial spirits changed, turning them into harmless creatures. The most crucial point was that the area of effect of this kind of divine ring was in all directions. Hundreds to thousands of miles in all directions would be affected by the runes. If this were to be used in a god battlefield, all of the gods would become huge fishes and sea creatures. This would enable his comrades to kill them however they wanted. This was the marvel use of creation techniques. Using the ring to unseal was simply wasting a huge potential. Once we reach the capital city, I must make the Emperor get this divine ring. Qin Mu thought to himself. When Kai Shi forcefully executed his magic power, Qin Mu saw the divine weapons flying back to their original positions in this 1,000-storied building. They shone once again with dazzling and precious rays. Kai Shi then gave a roar and circulated his magic power. This divine building of 3,000 yards became smaller and smaller until it landed in his palm. It shone with 10 colors, and its lights were like trails of fine beams swirling around it. Qin Mu was very envious. Once Kai Shi summoned Pan Gong Tso over, everyone left the underwater god city and made their way to eternal peace. First ancestor human emperor and Kai Shi's speeds were all very fast as they brought Pan Gong Tso and Qin Mu to fly. They were several times faster than Fan Yinxiao's fast ship, as evidenced by the mountains moving rapidly below them. After a few hours, they arrived at Eternal Peace's capital city. Qin Mu originally planned to sacrifice Pan Gong Tso to the knife, but he never found a chance. How I wish I could kill a few people, the youth thought to himself as he touched the small case in his Daotai sack. Pan Gong Tso's heart was pounding the whole time on their journey. He was afraid Qin Mu would suddenly jump out and kill him. Luckily for him, Kai Shi guarded him quite well. When they came to the capital city, first ancestor human emperor directly descended on the imperial palace. Qin Mu summoned a guard over to let him inform the emperor. After a moment, Yang Jigui hurriedly walked out from the palace with small and quick steps. He said with a smile, "Human Emperor Qin, everyone, His Majesty is already waiting for the emissary from Crimson Light Era in the audience hall. Please follow me." "Lord Yang, please lead the way," said Qin Mu in a solemn voice. While they were walking towards the audience hall, Yang Jigui turned around and looked at the three-headed and six-armed Kai Shi. His heart was astonished. He asked Qin Mu in a hushed voice, "Emissary of Crimson Light Era. What's his origin?" 35,000 years ago, Crimson Light Era built the celestial heavens. After the celestial heavens fell into South Sea, a small portion of them escaped. This Kai Shi is an executioner of the celestial heavens from that era. He has the abilities of a true god, or a heavenly god. Yang Jigui was stunned. When they came to the audience hall, they saw Emperor Yang Feng sitting on the dragon throne. Kai Shi bowed as he entered. Crimson Light Celestial Heavens emissary Kai Shi pays his respects to the ruler of eternal peace. Emperor Yang Feng raised his hands and smiled. "Stand up and talk. Since you are an emissary of a past dynasty, I can't be sloppy. Bring him a seat." He turned to First Ancestor Human Emperor and greeted him. "Hall of Human Emperors, First Ancestor Human Emperor, this little king is honored." First Ancestor returned his greeting. "Human Emperor is only a name, but your Majesty is the Son of Heaven. There's no need to be courteous." "Human Emperor, please take a seat," Emperor Yang Feng said. A guard beside them moved a couple of chairs for them. Kai Shi took a seat, while Pan Gong Tso stood on his left. First Ancestor Human Emperor also sat down. Emperor Yanfeng's gaze moved around and landed on Qin Mu. He felt a slight headache, but he said with a smile, "Minister Qin, come closer to me. I haven't seen you for a long while. Come speak beside me." Qin Mu went up to the throne room, and came to the right side of the dragon throne. Emperor Yang Feng was full of smiles. He asked Qin Mu in a voice that was as low as a mosquito's buzz, "What's happening? Where is he from? What era is Crimson Light Era? How long ago is it?" Qin Mu's consciousness pulsed gently as he used the communication method of Heavenly Feather Race. He explained everything briefly and said lastly, "Your Majesty, Kai Shi has something to ask from us. We can rip him off." Emperor Yang Feng put his heart at ease, and he laughed loudly. "I have long known about Crimson Light Celestial Heavens that have landed in South Sea, and I too find it a pity that the once glorious dynasty is no more. I frequently go to South Sea to pay respects to the seniors and distinguished predecessors, and even I couldn't help shedding tears. I have never expected that I could still meet an expert of Crimson Light Era today. Mr. Kai Shi, you are a guest from afar, and since you want to form an alliance with eternal peace, this is naturally extremely good for us. However, since my eternal peace empire is weak, we can't even protect ourselves. On the outside, we have devils that are causing troubles in Supreme Emperor Heaven, and on the inside, the gods of the celestial heavens could revive any time from their stone statues. With worries on both the inside and outside, my empire is truly lacking some treasures that could suppress the fate." Qin Mu coughed and said, "Your Majesty, the thing in Mr. Kai Shi's hands is the treasure of Crimson Light Era. It has a total of 1,000 layers, and millions of divine weapons are hanging on its eaves. It's called Crimson Light Heaven Suppressing Floor." Kai Shi's expression changed slightly. "Your Majesty, I'm an emissary, and I didn't bring any treasure for this visit." Emperor Yang Feng tilted his body and said with a low voice, "Minister Qin, so emissary didn't bring any offerings when coming to meet me?" Qin Mu hesitated for a moment before saying in a suppressed voice, "Poor." Emperor Yang Feng came to a realization and said, "This alliance has no sincerity. Kaishi frowned, and he gritted his teeth. He was planning to take out Crimson Light Heaven suppressing floor as an offering when Pangong so hurriedly whispered, "Teacher, don't let them fool you. This emperor and that Qin brat are the same kind of people. They are full of evil ideas. Teacher just needs to play along with them." Kaishi endured it. He took out a dragon-shaped jade pendant from Crimson Light Heaven suppressing floor and said, "A small gift for your majesty." A court official carried it forward and gave it to Emperor Yangfeng. When Emperor Yangfeng was examining the jade pendant, it separated into 6 pendants, which transformed into 6 real dragons. The dragons flew around in the audience hall, and after they finished dancing in the air, they coiled themselves around the pillars. Emperor Yangfeng was immensely delighted. Qin Mu tugged on his dragon robe, while sneaking a piece of folded paper to him. He said in a low voice, "Your Majesty, that's just a drop in the ocean. I've written a list of items, and Your Majesty can use this list to negotiate." Emperor Yangfeng opened up the slip of paper in secret, and his eyes widened. "Minister Qin, is this poor? Even if you sell my Eternal Peace Empire, I don't have that much wealth." Even if he was the Emperor of Eternal Peace Empire, he couldn't help sucking in a cold breath from seeing that list of items. "Emissary has come from afar, so please retire and take a rest first." Emperor Yangfeng composed himself and said, "As for the specific matters of the alliance, Lord Yang Jigui will be doing the negotiations." Court dismissed. After saying that, he hurriedly walked towards the back of the hall. He turned back to wave furiously at Qin Mu, beckoning him over. Qin Mu followed after him. When they arrived at the back of the palace hall, Emperor Yangfeng lifted his dragon robe and stamped his feet. "So wealthy." Qin Mu hurriedly said, "Soon to be poor." Emperor Yangfeng danced with raised hands while laughing. "Imperial Preceptor is fighting a war in Supreme Emperor Heaven, and he has depleted my imperial treasury. Money is finally coming back now." Qin Mu was dumbfounded. Emperor must have gone crazy from being poor. "I wonder if Heavenly Saint Cult has any money. Should we give him a cut of the profits?" In the imperial palace, many of the palace maids had an emaciated look, and their clothing were also simple and plain. Some of these palace maids were plucking vegetables outside the imperial kitchen. Qin Mu saw this sight, and for a moment, he thought he had walked into a market. Eternal Peace Empire was clearly very wealthy. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor had paved 2 roads to connect West Earth to Middle Earth, and because of this, the trade was booming. Qin Mu saw that the people were leading abundant lives after the imperial court had built the 2 roads. However, the emperor and the palace were poor. The reason for their poor state was because the battle in Supreme Emperor Heaven has affected the imperial treasury. As a result, the treasury was emptied out. The battle in Supreme Emperor Heaven was like a bottomless pit. There was nothing to earn, and whenever they fought a war, all of the funds and provisions for the troops, including the spirit weapons, were all provided to them from Eternal Peace. Furthermore, the people of Supreme Emperor Heaven were also immigrating continuously into Eternal Peace, and it also required quite a significant sum to settle these people down. It was no wonder Emperor Yangfeng was beyond elated and lost his composure when he saw that he could earn a massive sum from allying themselves with the remnants of Crimson Light era. Not long after, Yang Jigui came forward and said, "Your Majesty, I've already settled the emissary down. May I ask Your Majesty, how am I supposed to negotiate with the Crimson Light emissary?" Emperor Yangfeng passed the list of items to Yang Jigui. "Negotiate according to the items in this list. I shall grant the remaining survivors of Crimson Light era a place to settle down here. Open up a trading port, establish traffic, flying ships, and flying cars. Everything they need will be provided." Yang Jigui looked at the list, and he jumped in shock. He took a glance at Qin Mu and asked with a trembling voice, "Lord Qin, this list is not a joke, right? Qin Mu replied, it's not a joke. She will also accept the terms. These divine weapons aren't really of much use to the remaining survivors of Crimson Light era. They don't have that many people to use these items. Lord Yang just needs to remember one thing. They need our help, and it's not us that need them. Also, you must get hold of the divine ring of creation no matter what. Yang Zhigui left in a hurry. Emperor Yang Feng sighed ruefully. When the news of the battles in Supreme Emperor Heaven kept coming in during the early period, my blood was boiling, yet I was also scared and on edge. I wanted so much to personally be on the front lines to fight the enemies. After Imperial Preceptor arranged the cultivation method of Supreme Emperor Heaven, I have also comprehended it for quite some time and gained many benefits. However, I still regret that I can't personally go to the battlefield. As soon as Emperor Yang Feng finished speaking, a surprised voice cried out, the one that herds cows. Qin Mu looked towards the voice, and he cried out in shock, Sister Xiao, why have you returned back from Supreme Emperor Heaven? Ling Yuxiu ran over quickly, as though she was flying. When she saw Emperor Yang Feng beside Qin Mu, she immediately slowed down her footsteps, and walked with a solemn and dignified pose. Emperor Yang Feng said with a smile, there are no huge battles in Supreme Emperor Heaven recently, so Xiao is back. I still have some court affairs I have to settle, so I'll be taking my leave first. As he slowly walked away, he would turn back from time to time. When he saw Qin Mu and Ling Yuxiu just standing there without any untoward actions, only then did he left with his mind at ease. When Ling Yuxiu saw him leaving out of the corner of her eye, she immediately grabbed Qin Mu's hand and pulled him forward while explaining with a smile, after my father became a god, he has become more and more awe-inspiring. He has become a little sneakier as well, and is most probably looking at us from a dark place now. Let's go to the Imperial Garden to shake him off. Qin Mu stumbled forward as he got pulled along by her. After passing through a few bends and winding corridors, they encountered a few Imperial concubines gathering together and taking a stroll. Ling Yuxiu immediately let go of Qin Mu's hand and greeted the Imperial concubines with a dignified bearing. When the Imperial concubines had left, she grabbed Qin Mu's hand again and ran forward happily. After running a few more steps, they encountered several palace maids escorting the Empress, and Ling Yuxiu jumped in shock. She immediately returned to her dignified look to greet the Empress. Mother. The Empress pulled her over and muttered something to her. She then examined Qin Mu up and down, and said with a smile, Cult Master Qin is becoming more and more handsome. Qin Mu felt that her gaze at him was slightly wrong, as though she was a mother-in-law that was looking at her son-in-law. He blushed and stood aside. After the Empress walked away, Ling Yuxiu pulled him once more to sprint forward, and they finally reached the Imperial Garden. She started chuckling. It's really uncomfortable to be staying in the palace. I'm always being restrained by all kinds of etiquettes, and I can't be myself. It's still better on the martial world. I can be free and happy. Qin Mu went to examine the exotic flowers and rare herbs. They were so beautiful that nothing more beautiful could be imagined. However, there were also numerous palace maids that were watering plants and getting rid of pests in some vegetable gardens, and it was because the imperial palace had no money, so they could only plant vegetables themselves. Sister Xiao, has Saintess Xiong also returned to eternal peace? Qin Mu asked her while admiring the scenery. Ling Yuxiu was furious. We haven't met for a long time, and instead of chatting with me, you're asking about her. How much do you miss her? Qin Mu hurriedly said, I'm looking for her because of proper business. I'm not missing her. She's back. Demoness Xiong has returned with me. Ling Yuxiu walked forward while puffing her cheeks in anger. Qin Mu quickly followed after her, and the two of them came in front of a flowering tree. The tree was not tall, and Qin Mu held onto a branch. He bent down to sniff the fragrance of one of its flowers, and a smile broke out on his face. He executed secrets of 3 primordial spirit assembly. Just as his nose was about to touch the petals, his primordial spirit had already left his body. When Ling Yuxiu looked at the side view of his clean and handsome face, she couldn't help feeling the fragrance of the flower being intoxicating at this moment. Her heart couldn't help beating faster. Her face blushed, and her breathing also became quicker. On the other side, Cai Yinxiang suddenly sensed something, and she hurriedly executed secrets of 3 primordial spirit assembly. As her primordial spirit left her body, she saw Qin Mu's primordial spirit arriving. Saint Xiong, Princess Xiao and I are in the Imperial Garden, and things are urgent now, so I will keep things brief. The consciousness of Qin Mu's primordial spirit pulsed as he said, "The treasury of Eternal Peace Empire is empty. Does the sacred cult have any money?" Cai Yinxiang said with a smile, "You are dating that little vixen Yuxiu in the Imperial Garden, and yet you have come here to meet your mistress in private. This is truly the style of a devil cult master. The sacred cult has money, and buying half of eternal peace is no problem at all. Our sacred cult has properties all over the world and every hall is flourishing. No matter if it's trading in Middle Earth or West Earth, mining ores, or forging spirit weapons, our sacred cult is participating in everything. That's why our wealth is flowing in endlessly." Qin Mu pondered for a moment and said, "Leave behind the daily expenses for the sacred cult, and donate the rest of the money to the emperor. Let the emperor use it for his expenses." This video will end here.